Brought to you by DK Audio.
DK Audio presents an abridged edition of Baking Across America. Written and read by me, B. Dylan Hollis. It is for good reason that cookbooks seldom venture into the territory of audiobooks. Narrating ingredients lists, quantities, and weights isn't exactly many people's idea of an engaging listen. So for your enjoyment, I've removed them. I figured one would rather the experience of hearing stories and musings over something that sounded like a study guide for an examination. We'll save the cups and teaspoons for those baking from the hard copy. What remains is a cookbook positioned rather handsomely for fine narration. This isn't because I am both the author and narrator, tickle my ego though that might, but because I've written Baking Across America so that it is precisely those stories and musings that take center stage. There are, in fact, more words on tales and anecdotes than ingredients and methods within its pages. So here I present to you a book of cookery in monaural sound, free of instructions and free of measurements. A surefire ward against destruction for those liable to set fire to their kitchens by mere proximity to an oven. Herein I'll tell you about these spangled United States, about their recipes and how and why they came about, with what I hope you'll find to be a tasteful amount of affectionate, reverent satire. We'll start off in the nation's east and begin a vintage recipe road trip across the land. Next up, in Baking Across America. Introduction. What you have here is a celebration. An ode to America's towns, cities, and countryside, brought to living color by the treasured bakes that render them extraordinary. From Little Laramie, Wyoming, to the busy avenues of Boston, Massachusetts, this book charts a sugared path through the heartland in a manner never before attempted. It's a rather grand approach to the whimsy of pies and cakes, but a deserving one if you consider that making a dessert is nothing less than crafting a smile. From all corners of these United States, we will find boundless and exciting ways to deliver just that. Baking Across America is a jubilee, a darn good old-fashioned party of dishes that is sure to rouse your neighbors to their feet and gather them around whatever table you set. I'd like you to consider every state's recipe as an endearing postcard, stamped and signed with all the charms each holds dear. Some are beautiful, others are indulgent, and a curious few defy classification. But never before has the USA felt so splendid as when explored through these 100 dishes of coast-to-coast joy. Why not take a load off and see the sights? I reckon you'll find our road ahead brimming with sweet tales and rich histories. Why Baking Across America? Too often, outsiders lambaste Americans for not leaving the confines of their nation. As a foreigner myself, from Bermuda, I took note of just how many U.S. citizens had never left the country. It wasn't until I spent my college years in the U.S. that I realized the average American has little need to trek afar, as the vibrancy offered within their borders proves enough to astound even the most travel-hungry of wayfarers. I recall the first road trip I took from Fort Collins, Colorado, to Scottsdale, Arizona. In a single day, I began on the bare high plains, ascended through towering snow-capped mountains, motored down through the pines alongside river-carved canyons, and was spat out into the sun-drenched desert of Utah. The slab-sided ochre hues of Moab slowly gave way to the dusky sands and watchful cacti of the Sonoran Desert, and I was left utterly dizzy by just how much variety I beheld in a few hundred miles. With variety in vista came variety in food. I ping-ponged from the alpine sensibilities of fondue and hot cocoa to the desert spread of chilies and prickly pear. This was a trip that made me look at my collection of yesteryear's community cookbooks in a very different light. Where I had once organized them by decade, I began reading them by state, and boy, what a wild and wacky adventure that kicked off. The buttermilk obsessions of Texas would fascinate, while the unhinged and unbridled salads of Minnesota would abhor. I thumbed through the recipes of the South with such disbelief at their tonnages of butter that I wondered if there were enough cows on earth to satisfy their bottomless appetite.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?